Great. Well, thank you so much for having me, Lace. I feel like an OG lit uppy over here. So it's so great to go live in the group. And hello, everyone. My name is Cait Scudder. I am a mama to two, soon to be three. I am pregnant with my third right now. My kids are 2, 1, and this one will be here in February, or knowing my kids, the end of March.
Yeah.
I carried to about 55 weeks. No, both my kids were 2 weeks after the due date, which is a whole conversation, but my kids are young, they're close together. I am a business mentor for mothers. I am the CEO and founder of the Millionaire Mother brand podcast. And I'm a multi-millionaire homesteading mama living in Maine, really here to show moms that it is possible to hold both worlds of being really present with your kid's life, being a crunchy mom, if that's your thing, and also running a really successful company at a global scale.
So good. So happy for you to be here. Okay. So, Cait and I have actually, this is another thing I'll send out if you're on the email list, but Cait and I have actually been working together. Hey guys, hey Michelle, hey Charla, hey Liz. Thank you guys for being here. Cait and I have been working together for almost 5 years now.
Yeah, no, over 5 years this
summer. Yeah.
5 years in July. We just had our anniversary.
Yes. And we did a podcast together on Cait's podcast, the Millionaire Mother podcast. I could drop the link here too, but we'll send it out about long-term mentorship. So we're not going to dive into that today, although I'm sure there's like interest around like, what does it look like to work with someone for 5 years? But Cait's podcast will tell you. So go listen to that. But today we're really going to focus on kind of like the holding of all of this, because I think it's such an interesting, I think we're like the first like generation of women, I think, that are in this unique position, right? Like, I think there were obviously working moms for a very long time, but I think it looked like leaving the house. It looked like going to an office. It looked like, very different than like what my setup is, what your setup is. Like, we're both in our homes right now, in our offices. We both have nannies that are in our homes. Like, there's just like such a different balance. And I think we're so fortunate in that. I mean, I could not picture a better setup for myself. And I think we also hold a lot more because of that in some ways, because there's almost no separation of church and state, so to speak, anymore.
Literally.
Right? Like,
there's like 5 feet between here and my daughter's bedroom.
Yeah. Like, it's just all this like mushy mixture together. And so I would love to kind of just start the conversation there and say like, yeah, like talk to us about like holding all of that, and how I think we're the really the first ones paving the way for this sort of like new way to do it all. And I think that's really good. And I also think sometimes we don't acknowledge how much that puts on our plates, and it's like both and.
Oh my God, it's so both and. I love that you are asking this, and it's so appropriate because literally what I was doing 10 minutes before this conversation started is I was listening to the final edit for the podcast episode that's going to be releasing tomorrow on my podcast, which has my grandmother and my mom in it. So it's like, oh, so beautiful. I was like tearing up. I'm like, don't fuck up your makeup. You have a life.
Get it together.
Get it together. But it's like exactly what you're speaking to, of how we are the first generation that it is possible to do both in this way that doesn't equate extraordinary sacrifice. And that doesn't mean that there's not trade-offs that we have to make. I know that's something that you speak about so beautifully, Lace, and there totally are. But even hearing my mom like describe and talk about how when she, was in those early postpartum years, and when we were young, and finally then when we went back to school, like going after a career absolutely looked like getting out of the house. It looked like, putting on the pantyhose every day and like driving off in these uncomfortable heels and like doing that. And I don't know what you're wearing on your feet, Lace, but I've got my slippers on, and like it was just such a yes. I love it. It's like it's such a freaking different setup, from like having to discreetly pump in a disgusting bathroom stall and pretend that or like women who had to hide their pregnancies for like 5 months until it was unhideable. And we're just living in such a different time. And I think that, this piece that you're speaking to of that is so amazing. And we're able to, pave a new way in such a beautiful way. There's also this other side, as you say, of like, the separation is thin. And, I know you and I both have childcare, in-home childcare support, which is incredible. And it's so beautiful to be able to just like close the office doors, get in the zone and do our thing. But it's also like, I was just having, before I was doing that podcasting, I was just having lunch with both the kids, and so beautiful to have that together time. We do that and spend time together through the workday every single day. And yet those micro moments, it's an adjustment, right? Every threshold and every transition. And I know you've spoken about this of like Bennett crying mama, and it's so beautiful, but that is definitely an additional layer. And in some ways it was so much freaking harder for the generations before us to have to, and I kind of frame this and think about this, like work like a man, work like we don't have boobs and bodies that like are, however you choose to feed your child, great. But like, we don't have this like maternal instinct. The possibilities before us were like, work like you don't have kids, or mother and don't have a career. And doing both and holding both worlds is so possible now, which is so beautiful. And it just requires all of this finesse in these moments, that there are those shades of that shade of gray.
Yes. Kristen said your new promo is fire.
Oh, thank you. I can't see any of the comments, so definitely tell me.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Hi,
okay,
Julie.
great.
Annetta is excited. We're both on together, and she said life's interesting with kids. I still think about all my launches with 2 kids around me. Yes, totally.
Yes, totally.
I think it's so true. I often think how different my life would be if I was, in that scenario, because I physically leaving Bennett was very tough for me. Like, and I like truly mean this from like a hormonal perspective for a long time. Like even now still, it's pretty challenging. Like I physically do not think I would have been able to do it like in the way that like I would have been expected to do it as like a working mom in a different generation. And so it's like very interesting. Another thing that I think always comes up with stuff like this too is I think the other thing that we're like the new generation of that I think is so different. And I'm so curious for us to talk about this for a moment too. And then we can kind of like split off into some different sidebars of these conversations, but it's almost like it's okay to work as a mom if you need to work. But I think the question like we're kind of leaning into as a generation too is like, what does it look like if you're a mom and you choose to work? Like, so I think the millionaire mother is this like really interesting archetype of that, which is like, okay, so if you're that, you could be choosing not to, and you're still choosing to work. Almost like, how dare you is sometimes the vibe around that, right?
Totally, 100%.
So I'm like, I think that though, I mean, I'm sure there's like a million more, but I think those are the 2 big things that come up for me when I think about like, what does it look like to be doing it in this way? Do you know what I mean?
100%. Okay. So yes, this is so good. There's so much I want to say about this. First of all, so my husband, Toby, is my husband. That is obvious. We've been together for nearly 8 years. We just celebrated 6 years married last week, actually. And so for, what is that? What did I just say? 8 years. So like for 6.5 of those years, I was bringing in basically 100% of the money, like as the breadwinner, which is a whole other interesting dynamic and conversation to working and having kids. And so while my business has grown exponentially and we have become millionaires, we own multiple properties, we are investors. So could we ostensibly, me just step out of the picture entirely? He's making, a good salary by normal, I don't even, what even is normal, but by like traditional American standards, he's like bringing in 6 figures. So we could totally comfortably live off of that. What I think is really interesting and feels like, ooh, even a little edgy to just like claim out loud is like the standard of living that we desire and that I desire and that we desire together for ourselves, for our family. It does require that we bring in the kind of money that I am making. So it's definitely like, even the conversation of like, you don't need to work. It's like, well, you're not gonna like die. So, and like be kicked out on the street. So what does it look like to not work? It's like, well, that is true. And, Toby is Australian, like flying we want to have 4 to 5 kids. So we're just like in the freaking middle of
You're
this
gonna have
journey.
like 8, but yes.
We need like a jet. No, we don't. But like we need to be able to afford,
Yeah.
we have a high, like an expensive lifestyle and just setup, but by being from different sides of the world and having the caliber of experience that we want to provide for our children. And I think that claiming that, and this is why I said, I'm like, ooh, I feel a little like a little heat even saying that, is because I think a lot, for some fucking reason, we're so conditioned to be like meager and meek about our desire. And like, well, yes, I'm like so grateful for what I have. And am I grateful? Do I wake up every freaking single morning and say, I am living inside of my vision board? Absolutely. And it's okay to be like, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much, universe, God, spirit. And how much better can it get? And to hold both of those things as a mother is such an interesting dichotomy, because I feel like as moms, we're supposed to embody this like grateful, and I stand so much for women knowing, like self-last, exactly. And you can be both profoundly grateful for what you have and like unapologetic about wanting more. And so that is where I sit, that is where I stand. And I feel like it's a real edge for a lot of mothers to fully own that.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I have so much to say. I agree. I just want to read a couple of comments. Anetta was saying she agrees so much. She admires you. 5 kids. Wow. Hey, Michaela, excited to hear about this.
Like TBD, y'all. I might be like,
no,
she's fucking insane.
Watch this space. She's going to have like 8. She's not going to stop. I guarantee it.
We are like Ella is like obsessed with the Sound of Music soundtrack. And so it is like I'm like, can we do something? No, stop.
Emma said 100% we could do, oh shoot, I lost it for a second. Hold on. 100% we could do fine financially living off my husband's salary, but I both want to be working because it's part of what makes me feel good. And to your point, I want the extra financial freedom that comes from multiple salaries. Totally. Yeah, I think that, for me too, like something else I'll share from my perspective, I agree with everything that you said there, is I also went to school. I got 2 master's degrees. I love learning. I love being in it. I love using that. I love like the idea that like I would have to be so selfless as to give up all of that I worked for to say like, oh, these parts of me don't matter anymore. I think is so unfair too. Like even apart from the financial thing, even apart from need, like what if I have this like big personal desire to like make the use of this brain that I've cultivated and this kind of like human that I am. Like, I think it's just wild to even think that like, it's not that you're saying this, it's that too, but it's like, it's not even only financially driven. There's so much more to that. Like I would be 100%. So unfulfilled in so many ways, even though Bennett provides me so much fulfillment. It's just that same thing of like expecting one part of our life to fulfill every part of our life, I think is so unfair, right?
Oh, 100%. It's like the equivalent of being like, I'm married to my soulmate. Therefore I don't need girlfriends. I don't need hobbies. I don't need, it's just like, let me just stare into this person's eyes. And I'm like, I am obsessed with my husband. I love him to bits and pieces. But if that was the only thing that was like lighting up my world, that would be an issue. Same. And it's such a great analogy, Lace. And the same thing absolutely goes for motherhood. And yeah, I have a similar trajectory, like very fast track, went to a very prestigious college, got my master's degree at 23. And for me, it's like, it's that intellectual stimulation, it's the problem solving, it's being able to like real world apply all of those skill sets that we've cultivated through degrees, trainings, whatever, and outside. But also this, I think about, for the generations that come after us, like Bennett, watching you build and lead this business that truly lights you up, and like my kids watching me do that, it really sets this template of I get to pursue whatever it is that lights me up, because that has been modeled to me. And I think we all know, if you are a parent or you have, people in your world that are parents and you're watching them, like kids don't learn the best based on what we say. They learn based on observing us. And Ella, like, see, she comes into my office, she puts these on, she's like, Mom, I'm gonna do a podcast. I'm just gonna do a little bit of work. And she's so like cute, and she just sees how lit up I am about everything.
Yeah.
And I know that she is just like, wow, I could do, she doesn't know, I haven't like explained to her in depth, she's 2.5, but what I'm doing, but I totally will when she's even just a little bit older, and being able to
Yeah.
normalize and say, babe, you can start your own business. What do you want to do? You want to run a lemonade stand? You want to, and I'm not like, pushing her to like start a cookie company, but whatever, like, I want her to know that whatever she wants to do, she can achieve. And so how could I give up my dreams and pull my desire out of my life and say that to her and be in integrity?
Totally. It's so interesting you bring that up, because for me, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad had a job, and he was always very clear that like he did that job for like money for our family. Like he made the decisions he made to like provide for our family. And so when I was going to college and stuff, he was so helpful in kind of being like, do the opposite, like figure out what makes you happy, you go do that thing. And it's so cool to kind of be like, we get to give our kids the opposite of that now. We don't get to say like, don't do what I did, do this other thing, even though that was super supportive of me. And I'm so glad he like guided me in that direction.
Totally.
We get to like, Kenny loves his job too. He is so fulfilled by his work. And so it's like, we get to kind of be like, hey, you have two parents that are like lit by doing things that we love. Like, let's be the example for that. And I think that's so cool. Claire wants to know, did your success bring anything up in Toby that you guys had to work through together for you to continue to grow and your relationship to thrive too?
Not at all. No,
Never.
it's been, no,
It was easy.
Totally. Wait, so the question was, did my success bring something up, not specific to marriage or not to motherhood rather, but just in
more like in your and Toby's relationship dynamic?
Oh my God. Y'all, how long do you have? So I'm trying to think of how much of a scope of an answer. Okay, brevity is not really my thing, so I'm just going to give you the full scoop. So when we got together, which was in 2015, I was in Bali. I'll try to do a short version, but I was in Bali from yoga teacher training. I just quit my job. I was a middle and high school teacher previously. And we totally fell in love, knew we were going to get married. I left Bali after spending like a whirlwind month with him. He had like flown me back to Australia with him to meet his entire extended family. It was like clear that it was going places, unbeknownst to me at the time, but he had like asked his mom for this ring, which was his grandmother's ring, to propose to me in the coming weeks. And then I left Australia, did a couple of other work things, had like a summer teaching gig in Spain, and he flew out to meet me a couple months later where he proposed. And so we met and got engaged under this like ultimate honeymoon conditions, and wasn't grounded in like what I was doing yet for work. And so I moved to Bali about, what would that have been? Like 7 or 8 months after being with him. And then was like, shit, what am I going to do for work? And I still had a little bit of like a nest egg saved up. I was like doing some distance tutoring or whatever. And that's when I really started to see in Bali, there's like a big digital nomad culture. I started to just be exposed for the very first time. This was like 2015, 2016. So it was like the coaching industry wasn't booming yet, but it was going.
Yeah.
And I started to be exposed to what was possible. What was really interesting is that in that first like 10 to 12 month window when Toby was like wooing me, even when we were long distance, he would like set up dinner to be delivered at my place, massages. He would put me up in hotels with like fancy swan towels. And I was like, oh my God, he's my sugar daddy. He's going to take care of me for life. Well, we moved to Bali and I find out Toby's also 13 years older than me. He's like built multi-million-dollar businesses. He's lost multi-million-dollar businesses. So he's got a lot. He had like a lot of real world experience that I just did not have at the time. And we also come from like radically different perspectives around money. Toby's family has done well and comes from, a well-established family. I came from a family that growing up, we didn't have a ton of money at all. And so I never went into debt. It was always like debt was the big bad word. You don't go into debt. And Toby, like I said, he'd grown and lost big businesses. So like taking on tons of debt to like scale a business or to ride through a period, it wasn't a thing because he just had this like bigger perspective around money. And so I will never forget when I moved to Bali and finding out that he had like $20,000 of credit card debt. Like I literally, it was like, you could have told me that he had like another wife and children on the side. I was like, and it really freaked me out. I was like, maybe like this person who I thought was just going to like put me up in fancy hotels for my whole life can't really provide for me. And it was just like so confronting because I had to confront all of the insecurities I had about our relationship. And a lot of them were just insecurities about what the hell I was doing with my life and how I had like put so much of my financial sense of safety into this man that I was going to marry. And so that was really the beginning. And I had to share that context because that was the beginning of like a total awakening in me of, okay, separate from this person, I need to figure out what I am doing with myself. And Toby has from day one been my biggest supporter. He is truly like the administrator of our lives. He is the rock of our homes. We have a 12-acre property here in Maine that we homestead on. We have a 100-acre property that we do like not Airbnb, but like Airbnb in our place in Australia. And so we have a complicated logistical life that requires a lot of administration, and Toby is all over it and manages that side of our life. And he also has his own successful business, which has come online in the last couple of years. And so it has definitely been a process and a journey in growing my business with his like unwavering support, but like really like internal my biggest stuff that I've personally had to work through in the relationship has been owning my own sense of like safety and liberation financially, and like moving from this fairy tale of like, oh, I have a like sugar daddy admirer with like the sexiest accent in the world to like, girl, you still got to get your shit sorted. And that actually ended up being the biggest blessing, and it has continued to be for our family.
That's so good. I know that she didn't know this part of your story, but she loves it. And her husband also supports her with the admin. Yeah. I want to go back to some other comments too. Don't worry, guys, I grabbed some, but to like close the loop on this, I think something that's really helpful to see there. And I think maybe in terms of what you were asking Claire too, in terms of like, does that bring stuff up for like either side, is like, I think we all want to feel useful and fulfilled. And I think when you're that like type A woman, it can be so easy to take over all of it. And to be like, oh, I got the money and I got the kids and I got the business and I got the home stuff. And then I think we feel really fucking overwhelmed and we feel really resentful. And then our partners feel like they don't have a place in that. They are not contributing. They're not becoming fulfilled. So I think it is really helpful to be like, there's not any one right setup, or there's not like one thing where like, oh, the money is the one weird part. I think it's like, where are we both like truly contributing as partners? And I feel you so much on what you're saying, Cait, because like, I feel like just as an example, like I love being with Bennett. And so I feel like I handle the majority of like hands-on, like I am with Bennett kind of parenting, and Kenny handles like every logistic that makes it possible for me to do that with no stress. You know what I mean? He's like, he needs diapers, got it. He needs a new outfit, got it. If you guys need a snack, got it. Like, and it's like that we both feel really fulfilled in that capacity. And I think it's just helpful to hear that sometimes from other women and say that, especially in the motherhood role, where I think it can be really easy to be like I read something the other day where someone was like, you and your partner should always be doing like 50-50 childcare if you're contributing financially as a woman. And I'm like, that's so short-sighted, because it just
it's like the pendulum swing. It's the opposite of like the extreme opposite of the extreme of the woman does it 100% of the time. And I feel like this is an even bigger conversation around, home duties and like what even is providership. And in that traditional sense of like the man is the provider, but like, how does that shake out if the woman is the breadwinner, primarily bringing in the majority of the money? But like, it's so important to acknowledge, and I think that women have been advocating for this for years, you know, like all of the unseen and unpaid labor that goes into running a house, that goes into running a life. And that especially as that life gets bigger and more complicated, and then also as your personal wealth starts to grow, there's like money management. And so there's just all these additional layers that somebody has to do. And so yeah, I definitely, you know, I was like a competitive athlete. I come from this like super fucking type A, pass me the ball. And one of the most beautiful things about being in partnership with Toby in general, but then also being parents and then running this big company alongside him. And he's not involved in my company at all. I mean, I'll talk to him about business things, but he doesn't do any operational stuff. We explored going down that road, and it became clear that that was like, fuck no, I'll be super resentful of you. And I really respected that so much in him, that he was just like, not for me. Is that, you know, it's so important for each person to truly be seen in what they are contributing and what they are bringing to the table. And it's important as type A women who are, and especially for women who are the breadwinner, that we acknowledge our partners for all the stuff that they are doing, especially because, like, not even to mention, what is the impact on your intimate life? What's the impact on your sex life? What's the impact on your relating quality? If you're just constantly feeling like, well, he's just like useless over here because I'm doing everything, like that's not breeding harmony in your home. And that's not like, it's definitely not bringing some like spicy time in bed. So how do we start to not just shift how we're acting, but like shift how we're perceiving the balance that exists?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's like a new thing to navigate. And I think it's already a new thing to navigate if you're just in partnership and you're making more, but it's a whole other thing when parenthood comes in, because then there's like so many responsibilities on top of that. And so I think that's just like helpful to name. Okay, let me look at some of these other comments, see if you guys had questions. I think this was, I can't remember who said this one. I copied some of the comments, so I didn't miss somebody. I can't remember who said that. I have 2 kiddos. After staying at home with them for 6 years, they will finally be in school, and the youngest full-time preschool. It's so weird to have so much time to work in my business. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like just seeing you and doing that for 6 years. I think Anita said this, but I might be wrong. But she said, in fact, part of what made me hesitant about having kids at all, I now have 2, was that I didn't want motherhood to become my whole persona. Oh no, Emma said this. I wanted to keep expanding parts of myself. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that that's sort of like the point I think you're making here, Cait, right? Is like, this is about like letting the motherhood persona thrive, but not having that be the entirety of who we are or what we want, right?
Well, and it's also, yes, and it's also redefining, what does the motherhood persona mean? And again, I just like pressing the pause button and like really deconstructing even the way that we're understanding like the words that we use to unpack a concept, and this idea of like, my motherhood persona is only the way that I'm relating to my kids. But for me, who I am as an entrepreneur, who I am as a CEO is so inextricably woven into how I parent. And I don't mean because I'm on my phone or on the phone all the time in front of my kids. That's not what I mean at all. I mean, the way I lead with my kids is so influenced by how I lead inside of my company. The way that I teach my children about trusting their bodies and taking risks, you know, to the developmental degree that that's appropriate for where they are each in their own stage of growth and evolution, is so impacted by what I do in my work. And so this idea that like our motherhood identity equates to, I don't have any personal needs or desires, it's just all about you, honey, is like, we don't have to do motherhood like that anymore. We get to model a different way for our kids.
Yes, Emma said totally. And the motherhood persona I was fearful of is what my mother had, where being a mother was her personality.
Yeah.
I agree with that in this so much. I was an only child and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I like was her identity basically. And I remember how it was like the most challenging time in her life when I went off to college, you know, and it was like seeing that, I was like, oh no to that. But also I'm sure it will be like the most challenging time in my life when Bennett moves out to an extent, but not in the same way. But I so agree with you there. Felicia said you definitely have to find the balance between femininity, receiving, giving, and providing once you become a business running mama and wife. It was like a whole new world, but I love all of it most days. Yes, totally. I think that the other thing that's so interesting about what we're doing is there was more clear rules before. I think, right? Like it was like you go to an office from 9 to 5, or like the stuff you were talking about with your mom kind of thing. And it was like, even though that was like harder in most regards, I would say probably I think the rules were more clear. And I think what's so interesting now is like we're all just making up our own. Like I have a client who has a 7-figure business and no childcare. You know, we both have in-home childcare. I have clients that have full-time daycare, part-time daycare, like a parent or a grandparent watches, but like there's so many different things, and there's so many different, like how many hours does that equate to and what does that look like for you and all of these things. And so I think we're in this like time of like massive freedom for moms in some ways and getting to make these choices. But I think sometimes when you have such like a blank slate as opposed to this like really narrow path, it can be really intimidating too, to like have to discern what actually works for you, right?
Well,
So
and I think that's it.
that.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, like what actually works for you. Because I think
Yeah.
that the downside, if there is one, of so much freedom and so much possibility, is just, I mean, honestly, the thing that moms have struggled with forever, which is making ourselves wrong. And I know you
Yeah.
talk about this all the time as it relates to business, Lace, but like, how often are we like, oh my God, like I am checking my email after I put my kids down. Does that mean I'm a workaholic? Do I have a problem?
Right.
Do I need a 12-step program? Like, meanwhile, it's like, if you don't have childcare and like you're building your business during nap time and for an hour and a half after they go down, fucking good on you, mama, because you're making the choice
Yeah.
to be with them 100% full time during the day. And you know, I can't tell you the times that I have talked to moms and they've been like, I just feel like I'm doing this wrong. And when we really drill down into what is it that makes you feel like you're doing it wrong, is because, well, this person's doing it this way or this person's doing it that way. And it's like, the beauty and the power of there being so many different ways to do this is that you get to create your own adventure. You get to choose the things that best serve your life and this season. And that's going to look different in different seasons. Like last year, so I was pregnant with with Jack. I had Ella.
I was like, wait, what?
No, last year I was pregnant with Jack until June, when I delivered him, end of June. But we bought our house that we live in now in January of 2022. And so from January till end of June, Toby was gone like 16 hours a day coming up here. We did this massive, humongous home renovation project that should have taken us a year and a half, that Toby was the GC for, like general contracted, and got done in 4.5 months. I mean, it was literally insane. But the trade-off was, okay, I was the primary parent, and that was a totally challenging time. We did have childcare, but it was me in the edges of the day before the nanny got there. And then the whole afternoon bedtime routine was me, because Toby was doing this other thing of getting our home set up. And anyway, I bring this up because I feel like so much of the time we think like we have this story of, I shouldn't be working like this, or I shouldn't be doing that. But I had a mastermind that was running, that I had every Wednesday, I had an 8 p.m. call for. And once I had Jack, it was like instantly apparent, like, fuck no, I'm not doing calls at night ever again. But with one kid and with my husband gone, like in that season, I actually loved having the evening call, because it was like, oh, right, I get to fucking be like, I get to access this part of myself and like talk to some other adults. And I couldn't like go out because Ella was sleeping in the house. And so I just give that specific example because there are definitely seasons where needs and desires change. And I think the most important work is find out what works for you, and don't make yourself wrong. And don't make yourself wrong if and when you change your mind, because what worked for you then doesn't work for you anymore.
It's so true. And I also think like there like you may feel conflict in those parts of yourself, and just figuring out what the ultimate outcome you want there is. Like for me, I'm someone who I will always like figure things out, or like, oh, you're a client in Australia, but I really want to work with you, so I'll take that 8 p.m. call. Like that was kind of always my MO before. and could even probably be my MO now if I really wanted it to be. But the reality is, Kenny travels a lot for work, probably at least twice a month at this point. And like, I could still like rush myself at night and but I was like, I can let go of that part of my personality that like wants the excitement or would love to jump on a call. Like I can like lean into the part of me that's like, I want to not feel rushed putting my baby to bed, you know? And I think it's like, sometimes there are those pieces of you that can even conflict there. But I think being able to like be soft and gentle with yourself and that is so important. And that's kind of what I'm hearing for you is like, it doesn't mean there's not a piece of you that didn't love those calls. It's just that there is a bigger piece of you that needs to not have to turn it on at 8 p.m. after wrestling 2 children to bed.
Totally. 100%.
Yes. Thank you. I noticed a great conversation just shared and tagged you on IG. We'll catch the rest later. Kristen said, appreciate you role modeling this, Cait. I was 100% a corporate boss before motherhood. And for me, the challenge has been expanding into two kids mama with my living. I think I am not reading that right. But basically, I think she's saying like expanding into 2 kids also with like working and like balancing all of it.
Yeah. It's definitely a juggle. And in so many ways, I shared this on another conversation I was having recently, but I mean, going from not having kids to being a mom was a massive transition. But interestingly for me, I found that the bigger like existential opportunity, I'll call it, happened actually after I had Jack and moving to, it was sort of, I can't remember if I shared this analogy with you, you know, my brain works in analogies, Lace, but it's like, I felt like for me, having Ella was like, from an identity standpoint, from a business model and business operations standpoint, like I could basically keep, and I could keep doing exactly what I did before. And with very minimal, like there were more puzzle pieces to figure out, absolutely. And like relating to my new body, my new energy, hormones, like physical recovery from birth. There were definitely like a whole slew of new things to adjust with. But when I had Jack, it was like Ella was 20 months old at that point. So to have a toddler and then have a newborn, obviously totally different baby. Ella was like literally ready to go to college at 3 months. She started sleeping through the night. She stopped nursing. I exclusively pumped with her till she was just about 1 year. But she would not take my boob. And Jack, I literally thought he was going to nurse until he was 35. Like he was just like, I want to be on you. And so for me, the bigger adjustment identity wise and in my business happened when I had Jack. Oh, the analogy, it was like, you can carry, I think about like bringing the groceries in from the car. And to me, having one kid is like, oh, there's just like one more bag. Let me just grab it with my pinky and walk in and you can kind of do it. But having the second kid is like somebody putting like an additional bag right on you and like all the bags just bottom out. That was the equivalent for me of 2 kids. It was like, no, we can't just like, you know, hook a baby onto it and like call it a day and keep moving. It was like, we need to fundamentally reorganize ourselves here. And that was both so fucking hard and such a blessing because it is what paved way for the Millionaire Mother brand and really basically coming out about the fact that what I really am doing as a business mentor, as a strategist, as, you know, a catalyst for women really stepping into their power. After both of these births and after becoming a mom, it was like, that is who I wanted to be speaking to. And to claim that has been so liberating and so extraordinary, but it was not without its challenges of like, fuck, I'm rearranging everything right now, which has turned out to be incredible. So I just feel like if anyone needed to hear that, if you're in it, if you're questioning everything, if it feels like you need to drop the bags and fundamentally reorganize, I know how terrifying that can feel. And in my experience, both for myself and in clients that I've seen and supported, like that's sometimes when our best, most magical stuff comes forward.
Totally. Well, and it's also just like, I think, you know, almost every client I've worked with, every friend I've had, like you name it, everyone kind of goes through this like awakening or like, I want something else post baby. Cause you're like, things are just so different. Like, and I think that like everyone kind of wants to almost feel bad or apologetic about that. Sometimes it's like, oh, now I have to like change all these things because I'm a mom. And I think it's like this really liberating thing to be like, how could you not rework things? How could you not look at life differently? Like your whole world is different. And I think that,
Totally.
you had like that shift with Ella and then that like seismic shift with Jack. And it's just like the permission to be like, I'm not even the same person. Like, of course I have a different mission and message now,
100%, 100%. And yeah, and to not be afraid of that. And I always think, so much of the fear in birth is around, okay, like, oh, is it going to be painful? But it's really like the fear of what we don't know. Who am I going to be on the other side? How is this going to go? What is this birth going to look like? What the hell is it going to look like after the baby's here? And I think so much of that is akin to what we fear in business when we're like anticipating something's going to have to change, but am I going to navigate it well? Will I know how it's going to go? Am I going to be able to keep making money? And the fact is, like, the more I feel like motherhood is such a beautiful training ground for so many business lessons because we don't have control. Like, you never do. And but what you do have control over is how you are walking into it, how you center yourself, how you show up, how you affirm that no matter what is happening, that you're going to make it work and you're going to find your way through.
I also think sometimes it's the opposite way too, where it's like, I noticed that I think I have like really learned a lot of my patterns through business before I became a mom. And so I've been able to spot them faster. Here. Like, I know one of my like downfalls was when I get too in control or too in expectation. So you and I are like the exact opposite on this part, but we both had like amazing birth experiences. But I did literally zero planning for my birth. I read no books. I took no courses. I did absolutely nothing whatsoever. And I had like the best birth experience. Like, I wish I could
so great
20 times. Right. But like, I knew a lot of my stuff in that, you know what I mean? And I think that's really helpful. Like,
because if you started to get really planny, you would have gotten really in your head.
Or like once I was like literally giving birth, I think I would have been like, no, it's supposed to go like that. And then I would have felt like something was wrong or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I'm just like here for the ride. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love that. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
Which is like a lot of what I've had to learn in business, because my business model is kind of that with the revenue share model. I'm like, I'm here for the ride. Like, I don't have an expectation that X client is going to make X amount this month or whatever. I'm like here for the ride. So it's like sometimes we can like apply it, which I think is really cool too,
That's so cool. I love that.
Emma says, yes, I'm right there, Cait. My youngest is now 14 months and our family totally had to rearrange life with 2 kids. And that is part of what's motivating me to get my entrepreneurial self kicked into gear. I love that. Alyssa has 5 kids. She said, and don't worry, if you want the 5 kids, you'll level up to meet it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is so true. I mean, even my experience with 1 is just like somehow it all fits. Like everything I thought would fit fits,
Totally. 100%.
Although like massive props to all you 2+ mamas, because this girl's one and done, but still like it all works. It all fits,
Totally.
I'm here for the ride is a helpful little motto for me too. And I love to fight it. Yes. Well, we all love to fight it, but yes, right now, Bennett has been having the hardest time sleeping for the last couple months. Like, I don't know what the deal is. We're figuring it out. We're working on it, but little love bug is just struggling, which obviously means mama.
Yeah, totally. It's so hard when you're not sleeping.
Right. Yeah. But it's like so helpful because I'm just like, I know this will stop at some point. And I'm kind of just here for the ride. And like, obviously I'm going to do everything I can to support him, but like, he will sleep, it will be fine. And I just like, again, my work there is even like letting go of expectations that like, oh, he's, 15 months, he should be sleeping now. And I'm like, he's a fucking baby and he needs support. It's fine.
Oh my God, so much.
But it's like always the same thing for me.
Oh, totally. And it's so true. And I mean, this is like such a mom cliche of like, it all goes so fast, but like,
yeah, I
remember those just waking up. Jack and I co-slept because he nursed through the night and I just weaned him like a few weeks ago with the pregnancy. It just, for me, it was too much to be nursing and also growing another person, and just, yeah, I couldn't do both at the same time. And it was time. So anyway, but I remember when we were co-sleeping, he was like 7 or 8 months, and I'm like, I am going to be sleep deprived, waking up 50 times in the night forever. And then it's like, you blink and your little baby has 8 teeth, is talking, and is like just cruising. And it's like, it's such a reminder. And now he's going through this like teething thing, and he's sleeping okay right now. But it's just, so every stage just goes so quickly. And it's just a reminder that like, at every point, wherever the grass seems greener, there's going to be some human thing happening, both in motherhood and in business. So enjoying the ride is like, it's such a great motto.
I saw this thing. I feel like probably every mom has gotten this target. Maybe it's just me on Instagram, because I saw like multiple things of it, but it was basically like this thing about how like in parenting, you just realize that it's like all hard, because it all like, I forget how they say it, like matters so much kind of thing, where it's like, it's really hard when they're little because it's like so physical and full on. It's hard when they're older because it's so emotional, and there's so many people in their world that you can't control, and all of these things. And I loved that, actually, not the idea that it's all hard, but the idea that like, there's always different pieces that are hard. And I think that's what's so true in business too, right? Like, I think there were parts of, having been on your journey with you for 5 years, I think there were parts of, pre-motherhood Cait that felt were so hard in business that you wouldn't even blink at now. And there are parts of your business that are hard now in different ways, because you're holding all of this that you would have never had to consider before. And I think it's just kind of beautiful to give the space for both and all of that, kind of like we're talking about with like the whole motherhood stuff, where it's like, we're in the best season to be mothers, and it's like this new hard we have to navigate. And sometimes we're in like you're in such a pop season in your business right now, and it doesn't mean it's not like so much you're holding and navigating, right?
Totally. And I think that, no, I know what you mean. And it's almost like taking like inspiration from like morbid, like about life, from like morbid quotes about death or something. Like, I know what you mean. It's not like, oh, how great, it's hard always, but
exactly.
I know what you're saying, that how inspiring that could be. And what comes up for me is like, what is so liberating about that is it frees us from this illusion that if I just jump ship and change my circumstances, everything would be easy. And like, that is the great lie in business, in motherhood, in marriage. Like, it's not about escaping. It's about like dropping in deeper to where we are now, and like not having this warped expectation.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like that's what you're like so focused on here, kind of with your rebrand, with this conversation, is like, how do we embrace all of this as it is, instead of almost going to that old programming, like you were talking about with the podcast, with your grandma and mom, of like having to work like you're not a mother. And it's like, what does it look like to work like you are? And like, there will be harder parts of that, and there will be better parts of that.
100%. And that honestly, Lace, is the whole motivation and mission behind the rebrand of the Millionaire Mother. And like, everything that I'm putting out now is really about not just what does it mean to work like a mother, but what if we could strip away all of the programming, all of the paradigm conditioning that says to be a mom is a hindrance in business, like hide it, tuck it away, tuck it in, and like leave that over here to like get down to business. I just shared on my Instagram yesterday this picture of like business professional now and then, and like the now is me lying down next to my client. We're both breastfeeding our baby boys, and the then was like perky and like erect at the front, like with a laptop in front of us, looking like camera ready. And it's just like this idea that to do business well or to succeed, we have to do it this way, is not only like so constricting and small making for mothers, but it is missing the fact that I believe that once we become moms, and I mean, research shows this, our brain chemistry, our neurochemistry actually changes, and all of these superpowers, not just our intuition, but our creative perception, our spatial awareness, like we literally our neurotransmitters open wide up to stuff that we were not perceiving before. And I believe that as mothers, we have access to this extraordinary like suite of superpowers that apply to our businesses that become available to us once we become moms. So that is really what we're doing. It's not just you can do it all. It's like you are so much more equipped now to succeed in this way if you let yourself tap into that beyond all the noise that says it needs to be separate.
Totally. And actually, I think too, and then we'll wrap up here because I know we're getting to time, but one little thing I'll add to that too is like, I also think it's such a clarifier, like the things you would worry about before don't matter now and stuff like that. So it's like, you get all of these resources, plus you have all this renewed perspective of like, what's important, what matters, what do you want to give time, energy, attention to? And so it's like this like literal, like perfect storm in the best possible way of like, here's like all the clarity and insight you could need, run with it, right?
100%. I love that so much. So
good. Okay. So tell us, I'm sure the internet has seen this, but in case they haven't, tell us about what's coming up with Matriarch.
Totally. So I am so excited, you guys. I am hosting a 3-day workshop. It is totally free, August 28th, 29th, and 30th. So it begins next Monday. And you can register if you go to my Instagram and just DM me the word matriarch. I will send you the link for that. But it is a 3-day workshop for mother entrepreneurs, for women who are pregnant, for women who are thinking about becoming moms in the future, skeptical, considering, but like fucking terrified about how all the pieces will fit together. We are going through a 3-day workshop that really unpacks. So it's not just like, rah, rah, you can do it. We are literally going into the frameworks and the strategies to support you on an identity level, on an infrastructure level, and on an income generating level, how to skillfully hold both worlds at the same time. And I'm so excited. We have over 7,500 women already registered, which is like blowing my fucking mind, and is going to be probably the most impactful thing that I've ever done. And it's free. So would love for you to come join us if you're listening to this.
So good. Okay. So DM Cait Matriarch is the move. Maybe you could drop your Instagram or just tell them what your Instagram is.
For sure. So my Instagram is just at The Millionaire Mother. So The Millionaire Mother, type that in. And you can go to my Instagram. You can just DM me the word matriarch or comment matriarch on any of my recent posts. You'll see the booby breastfeeding post that I just spoke to on the grid there. And I will send you the link, and I would be so honored to have you in the room.
So good. Thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like this is so important. There's so many more things I would love to dive into here. So
I know this needs to be like a 5-hour series, but mom life.
If you are also wanting more, you will get it. Go to Cait's podcast as well. And again, I'll share that podcast that we did together.
Yes, that was such a great episode. Such a good episode there.
Yay. Love you. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.